Hello and thanks for joining me. Well, those of you that have followed my channel for a while know that I've experimented with several different methods of doing cutoff on a metal lathe. And cutoff on a metal lathe is one of the more demanding things you can do. If you don't have it just right, it's not going to work. And some of the methods I've come up with work really well. Some of them don't. Some of them have drawbacks. Well, they all got some kind of drawback. Let me show you what I've already done. Here's the first thing I came up with. It was a plate that rides on the ways on your metal lathe. And then I made a post under this GTN3 carbide insert holder. And that post screwed onto the bottom of that right there. And the post supported the front of the tool. Well, it worked fantastic as long as I was using my Logan chuck. And my Logan chuck had very little depth this way. And when I went to the larger or deeper chucks, I started breaking tools. And what was happening is the amount of cutoff or overhang from the spindle increased, and the tool was solid, but the chuck was moving. I know that's hard to believe, but the chucks will move on the threads when you got a lot of overhang. Now some of your larger lathes with probably 2-inch spindles don't have that problem, but if you've got an 1.5-inch spindle, and I've done several videos on it, the depth of the chuck drastically affects cutoff. That's why the original chucks were really shallow, or I presume that's why. Anyway, so this works as long as you have a good solid spindle. And I may revisit this at some point. I took the video down because people were breaking tools. And these tools here, they're about $35, $40 a piece, tool holder. And I guess it was costing people money, and I just felt like it was a responsible thing to do to take the video down. Anyway, the next tool I developed was a direct mount tool, and it involved taking your tool post off and mounting it directly to the compound like that. One of the drawbacks to this is it just takes time to take your post off, and sometimes you have a setup you want to keep and you have to destroy that setup. And another drawback is that ideally the compound needs to be square so that it's better supported. It'll work like this, but it's better if the compound's straight in. And that holds the blade directly. And this works really, really well. It just takes a lot more time to put on the lathe and remove. The quick change is the ideal way to do it. But the quick change itself also has some limitations, some things that affect how solid it is. For one, your tool's hanging off to the side. Anything you put on a quick change is hanging off to one side. And that makes a difference. There's a distance here. So that tool is probably hanging off the edge of that tool post right there, about 1.25 inches, I'd say. So anyway, the next thing I came up with, I don't have the tool any longer. It was the first generation of my spring cutoff. I just showed a picture of it at the intro. But here's what I came up with on the second time. The second design of the spring cutoff. And this one works good, and it's a quick change, but it chatters. It chatters at the beginning of the cut until it gets under load, and then it smooths out and cuts good. Another drawback is I had to put a limiting screw in here so that it would cut all the way to the center. When it'd get to the center, the tool would try to go under. This right here would flex and try to go under what you were cutting, and it would usually cut the piece off, but it'd leave a big nub. So we're going to remake this tool today, and I'll show you what I got in mind. So I got the pieces all cut out for this next design, and it's basically going to be the same as this tool right here. However, a friend of mine sent me an old cutoff tool made by Williams. Armstrong also made them, spring cutoff, which is where I got the idea originally. And there it is. And I was comparing that to my spring cutoff. And the difference was that relief point, this hole right here, is much higher up. And this thickness here is thinner. If you'll notice where that hole is. Now that affects several things. It affects the leverage that this tool has on that deflects. It affects how much the blade pulls back when it starts to dig in. But I'm going to try to duplicate this. Now I haven't even tried this, but I assume it worked. Hopefully. Anyway, we're going to redesign this portion of the tool. We'll remake the whole tool, but here's what I got now. And this is hopefully going to match the position of that hole versus the tip of the blade a little bit closer. This hole is going to be right in here, and I'm going to make a couple of mounting bolts right here so that I can adjust the top rake, I guess you call it the back rake, angle of the tool. Now this tool, you'll notice they've ground a little hook in it. This blade here, hopefully you can see it good. And I'll put a link to this blade. It's concaved in the right there. It's got a groove in the center of the top. And that is really effective at stopping the chips from binding in the cut, and it makes this blade work really well. So I can't sharpen a little back rake in that without affecting that chip formation. I can't do that. So I've got to tip the blade up slightly to get that same effect. How much is good? I don't know, but the new design will be adjustable like that. So we'll be able to hopefully find that sweet spot. Probably won't have to ever change it again, just lock it in. Anyway, that's what we're going to make right now. Okay, that's the way the piece is oriented in the mill. I've got it in here. You saw me make that handy little vise stop. You can index to it. And I'm going to make several of these. I didn't mention that before. I'm going to move this whole position, move it this way. Give me several different options, so I can just bolt this piece on and try different spring pressures. So I've touched off to this, and we're going to cut the slot for the blade first. Okay, we're going to cut this groove right here, right now, and it'll be flush to this side right here. I'm using a 1/2 inch end mill. And then I will cut it to size a little deeper with a 1/4 inch end mill. And the blade is wider at the top, so that'll make it sit perfectly vertical. 68 thousandths here. I need to be more like 70 thousandths, maybe even 80. It won't hurt it to be a little bit extra deep. So I'm going to touch off on the surface and then go 80 thousandths deep. Touching off right there, and go 80 thousandths deeper. I really like this flood coolant. It has some drawbacks. It makes it kind of hard to see what you're doing, but it makes milling much smoother. Okay, I touched off right here on the edge of that slot. The slot's 1/2 inch. And then I re-zeroed the DRO. Measuring this, it's 680 thousandths. So subtract a ½ inch, and that's 180. 180 thousandths I need to move my table x-axis. I'm going to go a little under that because I want this to be a really good fit. I'll sneak up on it. Okay, we're going to drill this hole here on all the pieces and then turn around and drill this and mill it. Okay, I'm drilling the second hole, and I've got to slot this one. I'll watch out I don't hit my parallels underneath. Okay, I moved it 1/8 of an inch, and I've got my table stop set. Drilling 2 side-by-side holes, and then I'm going to connect the 2. I just drilled 2 holes and then moved the table to connect the 2. Okay, I quit using coolant for drilling. It's really getting messy. Slinging coolant everywhere. Makes it easier to clean up too, just blow the chips out of the way. So, I'm drilling the relief hole. The first one, which I think is too close, not stiff enough, is 3/8 of an inch. The next one I'll make is half, then 5/8, etc. Using auto feed on the mill. Pretty darn nice. Auto feed, auto down feed. Okay, now I got to cut a slot for my depth stop. 1/8 inch. Okay, now I'm going to make the blade clamp, and I'm going to do it very similar to that, except I'm going to put it more in the center. That way it'll clear the chuck jaws a little better. I'm going to touch off here and then go down 30 thousandths. Got a 3/16 drill in there, which is not quite big enough for a 1/4-20, which is what it'll be. I'll bore it out after I get it drilled. Okay, now I'm going to cut this slit right here. You could do it with a bandsaw, but I've got a saw here, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. Yeah, let's put one of these things together. Okay, here we are. We're ready to give these things a try. What we got here is 7/8, 5/8, half, and 3/8. That's how far this hole is from the edge, and that will dictate how much pressure it takes to make this bend and flex. Now truthfully, I already tried this one. So we're going to start out with this one, which is 3/4. Falls right in there. So we'll try the 3/4, and we'll try that one, and then progress to the weaker spring. I suspect this one will not be strong enough. This one here was too strong, and I had one mishap. It stalled the lathe, the tool grabbed. I'm going to sharpen the tool after every cut so that everything is a true comparison. Anyway, let's cut some 3/4 inch stock. Okay, here's my setup. I'm going to have limited amount of overhang, about 1 inch, and cut off about an 1/8 inch disc. And I'll be feeding oil like that with this little needle oiler. That's an excellent way to do cutoff. But we're going to view this from the other side. That way it's not in the way of what I'm doing. The speed is 500, which is about the right, 500 RPM, which is about the right surface speed for a 3/4 inch stock with high speed steel. To set the height, I'm going to do it the way I always do it. Make sure that's vertical. Not super critical, but I found with these spring tools that a little bit high is better. That way it cuts all the way to the middle. Here we go. Surprisingly, I heard a little bit of a chatter there, but not bad. Probably the overhang on the chuck. I'm going to give that an A+. Okay, now we're going to switch to the next weaker tool. Okay, the last one we tried was 3/4 inch, and this one is 5/8. This hole right here. And something I didn't discuss before was the angle. I'm measuring it right here, 3/32, just to make sure it's all the same. I don't know what the right angle is. We're ready to try this. Okay, here goes. Okay, that did something that I really didn't like. It went underneath the last little bit. So that tells me that this is a little bit too weak right here. So let's go back to the one I just had on there and verify that it does not do that repeatedly. Okay, we're back on the 3/4 inch one. We just tried the 5/8 and it tried to go under the stock at the end of the cut. This is the one that screeched just a little bit, which is not really concerning, but it's something I don't really like. But the stick out on the chuck is slightly less. I'd be willing to bet it's not going to do it this time. No, it didn't do it. That actually tried to go into the stock just a little bit. And that may just be something that we can't avoid. I don't know if you noticed the tool move forward just a little bit. That's where it went underneath that little nub. I think I'm going to try the stiffer. That's the one I had trouble with. I'm going to try this is 3/4 inch. The other one's 5/8. And we're going to go to the 7/8. 7/8 spring pressure. Okay, we're going with the 7/8 inch hole position here. And that's a considerably stronger spring. Okay, this once again 500 RPM, and this is a 7/8 hole. Hole is 7/8 of an inch away from the flexing point. See what it does. I think that did really well. It's leaving her nub right there. I don't know if maybe slowing the feed rate or increasing the RPM might help that. Don't really know. But I think the stronger spring is where we need to be. And that's the strongest spring, so I can't go any stronger. As long as it doesn't jam the lathe, I'm okay with it. Let's try some larger stock. This is 1.25 inch. 1.25 inch cold rolled. This is all cold rolled steel. Okay, here it goes. 1.25 inch stock. That surface speed is probably a little bit fast. Wow, give that an A+. I think that about wraps it up. I guess I could try without the upward tilt on the blade, but I'm pretty pleased with the way it's doing. I'm just going to leave well enough alone. Can't hardly beat that. Well, here's what we came up with. 7/8 of an inch between the center of that hole and the edge here. 3/4 inch was second best. 3/4 inch left a little bit more of a nub in the middle. You can raise the blade height just a little bit and alleviate that nub, and it might be the safer way to go. I did have one time when it jammed the lathe on this tool, but I believe the blade might have been getting a little dull, or I didn't get enough oil on it. But I haven't had to do it since, and this one's working exceptionally well. So I would recommend the 7/8 of an inch hole position. Anyway, that about wraps it up. Thanks for joining me, and be sure and subscribe and ring that bell.